the Miss Grand International pageant is not considered an alpha pageant because it does not satisfy two major requirements to be one. And that is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Jason Cappuccino of Sashes&Scripts, and today pag-uusapan natin what are the criteria to be considered an alpha pageant. So, before we jump into the criteria themselves, kinakailangan muna siguro pag-usapan natin saan nagmula yung konsepto ng Big Four na pageants. This concept started actually around the 2010s, the early 2010s to mid-2010s, wherein, pageants and pageant portals thought of a way to categorize pageants according to their scale, according to their relevance, and according to their importance. And dito nagbunga, dito ipinanganak yung konsepto ng alpha pageants, ng Big Four pageants. And during that time, isa sa mga pinagdebatehan, especially when I was still back with Sash Factor, where we had a conversation with regards to what comprises or what are the criteria that should comprise the list where we are going to look at and evaluate, international competitions to make the alpha pageants. These are the things that we have, listed in common. Isa sa mga pinaka-importante na naisip namin na kinakailangan maging basehan ng pagpili ng alpha pageant is yung prestige, yung brand equity, yung popularidad ng isang pageant. Pangalawa dito is yung kalidad ng mga kandidata at yung gaano karami ang sumasali sa patimpalak. Pangatlo, we have yung advocacy ng pageant, because at that time, naisip namin na kinakailangan merong pinanghahawakan or merong pinangangatawanan na advokasya ang isang competition for it to have, relevance in this world. And then, we've also included, the pre-pageant activities and the post-pageant activities ng winner and ng mga candidates. Of course, hindi na rin mawawala dyan yung kung gaano ka-prestigyoso, gaano ka-glamoroso yung finals ng isang pageant, as well as kung it is telecast internationally. Of course, throughout the years, lahat ng mga ito nagkaroon ng developments, nagkaroon ng pagbabago as there are more and more, pageants na sumulpot, na nag-develop throughout the years. And because of yung stringent na criteria ng mga ito, we decided that we need to make sure that the pageants that we considered as alpha pageants really stick to these criteria. However, ngayon at I am now an independent vlogger, I have included two additional na criteria that I think should be included when it comes to discussing what should comprise an alpha pageant or what should be considered a Big Four pageant. The first criteria that a pageant should satisfy to be considered an alpha pageant is its brand equity and its brand heritage. Now, originally, yung criteria na to was when I first wrote about it in 2014. Ang inilagay ko was brand history. But now, we think that we needed to update and upgrade yung criteria na ito, not just include yung history, but more of its heritage. And the reason for that, it's because when we talk about heritage, we are talking about yung journey ng pageant and how it developed its philosophy and its core values. And that is very important when we talk about, alpha pageants, because a brand, a pageant's brand equity primarily dictates kung ano yung value premium ng brand na yon as compared to its generic equivalent. Which means that kapag ikumpara ang pageant na Miss Universe, Miss Earth, Miss International, and Miss World versus the regular international competitions, ano yung pagkakaiba when it comes to its heritage and when it comes to the power of their brand name as compared to, let's say, any of the international na mga tourism competitions. There is a certain, prestige that is associated to the Miss Earth, Miss World, Miss Universe, and Miss International na mga pageants simply because of its heritage. Meaning that these brands, having been established in the 1950s, in the 1960s, and in the 2000s, have already accumulated for itself, a certain brand recognition, a certain recognition on what it stands for. The Miss Universe pageant, although it was established in 1952, the title itself has already been in existence since the 1920s. In fact, there was two versions of the Miss Universe pageants in the 1920s that was established, I believe, somewhere in Galveston, Texas. That was the first international competition of its kind. And then later on, when it was reestablished again in 1952, yun na yung Miss Universe na kinalakihan natin lahat that we have known and grown with throughout the years. And throughout those years, the Miss Universe saw itself and grew itself from a swimsuit competition, swimsuit-sponsored competition, to a more women-empowering na pageant that it is nowadays. Same thing with Miss World, wherein it was established in 1951 as a bikini contest. A very controversial move at that time. And later on, at around 1970s, the way that it established itself and grew itself from a bikini competition to a beauty with a purpose na driven na pageant, nakikita natin that there is a change in the way that the pageant is constantly reinventing itself to be relevant to what is required and needed in society. And that is why nowadays, if you look at the Miss World competition, wala nang swimsuit na aspect yung competition, because ang pinag-uusapan na lang at tinitignan na lang na criteria is the candidate and what they bring to the table, not purely on the physical aspect as before. Then we also have Miss International, which was established in 1960. And this is one of those pivotal na mga pageants, because in the 1960s, this is also the time where we saw people having more voice when it comes to political issues. And this saw, social activism as a whole. And that is why during that time, the Miss International pageant, its first and foremost na advocacy was to promote peace through mutual understanding, because that was the time where there was a lot of, uprising with regards to different social movements at that time. So, merong kanya-kanyang journey and kanya-kanyang heritage yung mga pageants na ito that they bring into the table. Miss Earth, being the youngest among all four pageants, which was established in through the year 2000, brings something new and different into the table, because this is the first pageant that focuses on environmental awareness. And this, as we progress throughout the years, has become more and more relevant in society. And we've seen the growth from, a very small fledgling na international competition to a more respectable competition that it is today. And that conversation brings us now to the second criteria that is important when selecting what comprises an alpha pageant. And this is the conversation on the pageant's advocacy. Importante na isama natin ito doon sa criteria, because it allows us to have an understanding on what the pageant stands for. Their advocacy allows them to have something to do, allows them to have something to be involved in after they've crowned their winner. It's important that after all the glitz and glamour is done, the real work begins. That is where we see public appearances talking about women empowerment, talking about the importance of taking of our environment, the importance of cultural understanding and understanding the differences of each countries, to promote peace, to promote women empowerment, to promote charity all over the place. So those are the things that is very important when it comes to the criteria na advocacy. Kasi ang advocacy, yan yung isa sa mga bagay-bagay na tinitignan in order for the pageant to have relevance at this point. The third thing that I want to point out with regards to the criteria is yung importansya ng pre-pageant activities and ng post-pageant activities ng isang competition, because the pre-pageant activities allows candidates to enjoy the competition, to have an eye-opening experience on sisterhood, on pageantry and help develop these candidates into women who can make changes in their society, in their communities. Importante na merong planned program of activities ang mga candidates so that may mga areas kung saan sila ginajudge, may mga areas kung saan tinitignan yung kanilang behavior, yung kanilang attitudes, yung kanilang mga physical and emotional and intellectual na mga attributes to find if they are very right for the title that they are aiming for. These are the activities like the preliminaries, where the candidates are judged and trimmed down to semifinalists. These are also, the orientation, where the candidates are given a glimpse on what kind of organization the pageant organization is all about, ano yung ethos and philosophy ng mga pageants na ito, and then they get to understand what kind of winner the pageant is looking for. And given an idea how long the pageant is going to be, what are the areas where they are being judged, what are the criteria for judging. So importante yung mga pre-pageants na ito so that the candidates gets themselves immersed into cultural activities like the Miss International does, where they have ikebana and flower arrangements, they have tea ceremony, they wear kimonos in their activities, and a lot of these things allows them to understand other cultures other than the countries that they represent. It is also important to include in this video the importance of the post-pageant activities and duties of the winner. Kasi hindi pwedeng after the coronation night, mananahimik na lang si winner for the rest of her reign at walang ginagawa, and then susulpot na lang siya kapag magpo-corona na lang siya ng panibagong winner. It's also important that hindi lang dapat binibigyan ng tuon ng pansin yung public appearances niya after the crowning, na hindi panay crowning lang ng mga national winners siya nagiging visible, but also be more involved with the different na mga advocacy driven na mga activities ng pageant. Hindi pwedeng ang Miss Earth winner saka na lang natin nakikita kapag nagka-crown siya ng mga national winners during her reign. Importante na nakikita natin siya na may ginagawa with regards to her advocacy, and that is why Miss Earth is one of those pageants na nire-respeto natin, because we see the winners have conversations, seminars with the United Nations when it comes to environmental protection and understanding different laws that protect the fauna and flora of different countries, and what are the push na mga agenda ng United Nations when it comes to environmental protection. And then we also see a number of Miss Universe winners being involved with charitable institutions with regards to HIV and AIDS, and even Smile Train na organization for cleft palate, and it allows them to put into motion yung mga advocacies that they have. Kasi hindi pwedeng drawing lang yung mga advocacies nila. They need to be involved with activities that are related to these causes that they champion for. The next criteria is the most visible and the most visual criteria among all the criteria that we will be discussing in this video, and that is the quality of the finals production and its telecast. It is important to understand that the reason why Miss Earth, Miss International, Miss Universe, and Miss World are in this list, it's because these are the international competitions that are broadcasted throughout the world. The Miss Universe is enjoyed by millions and billions of people around the world, as well as the Miss World pageants, because they are telecasted throughout throughout the globe. And this is the reason why they are the biggest, international competitions, because una sa lahat, meron silang mga sponsors na mga television stations that allows international coverage. Pangalawa is that dahil sa tagal na nila sa industriya, they are able to establish relationships with these international na mga broadcast partners. The Miss Earth is another one of those competitions that has been broadcasted throughout the world since its inception in the 2000s. And despite Miss International being inconsistent when it comes to its international telecast, ang importante dito is that merong mga mga countries that broadcast the pageant worldwide. Unlike other international competitions na hindi ganun consistent yung kanilang telecast. It is very important that we include in this criteria yung international telecast because karamihan ng mga pageants lately, they do YouTube live stream or Facebook live stream of their finals na pageant. This is not to take away, doon sa mga pageants that are doing so in social media. However, iba pa din kasi na you are being telecast throughout the globe through reputable international na channels. And another criteria in this list is yung popularity because it's important na aside from prestige, there is a measurable way to see whether or not a pageant, has following. And this is very much, a huge chunk that we really look into on social media because if you don't have a presence on social media, hindi ganun kalaki yung clout mo. And nowadays, very important yung social media presence and strength ng social media na accounts ng mga pageants na ito in order for them to voice out their advocacies, to make people know more about who they are, what they are as a pageant. Popularity on social media, however, is not end all and be all of a pageant, and that is why there are several other categories and criterias that we have to look into. Now, last in the criteria ng alpha pageants is the quantity and the quality of the delegates. Of course, we all know that the Miss World pageant has the biggest number of candidates in its roster of candidates throughout the years. Sila yung kauna-unahang pageant na umabot ng lagpas 100 candidates in their annual na pageant, and nowadays naglalaro sa more than 100 yung kanilang mga candidates na sumasali every year. Next comes Miss Earth and Miss Universe na nagkakatalo sa number of mga candidates, which usually they have around 80 candidates to 90 candidates per year. And then we have Miss International, whose numbers usually fluctuates between 60 and 70 plus na mga candidates every year. Importante na ilagay natin sa konteksto yung quality at yung kalidad ng mga candidates because a lot of girls would aim for these 4 biggest na international competitions. And despite other competitions na umaabot ng 80 o 90 ang kanilang mga candidates, these 4 pageants remain to be the most important na mga pageants when it comes to the quality and quantity ng mga candidates, simply because karamihan ng mga nananalo sa mga pageants na to are not appointed candidates. There is a need to stress on that kasi may mga pageants na ang kanilang usual na route in selecting international representatives, is through appointments, and a lot of international pageants does this. The difference, however, in Miss Universe, Miss Earth, Miss World, and Miss International is that karamihan ng mga candidates nila are crowned queens in their respective na mga countries, and that sorts of separates them from the rest of the world because hindi sila yung tipong kinakast lang and then saka ipapadala sa international competition. Ibig sabihin, nasasala ang mga candidates na to bago sila lumaban sa international competitions like Miss World, Miss Earth, Miss International, and Miss Universe. Because marami na ang nagsulputan na mga international competitions sa panahon ngayon. In fact, there was a proliferation of new pageants from the years 2015 up to present. So we now have to introduce 2 additional criteria that we really need to include into the way that we define what is a alpha pageant. The first of these 2 new criteria is integrity. Importante itong criteria na ito dahil hindi lahat ng mga bagong nagsisulputang pageant may integridad na matatawag. And because integrity means adherence to a moral code or to have the image of trustworthiness and incorruptibility, to have the image of honesty and transparency, and it takes years to build that up. And one of the pageants that really has become a barometer of fairness and transparency is the Miss Universe and the Miss Earth na pageant. Because kung sa mga hindi nakakaalam, ang Miss Universe na pageant way back in the 80s, actually started in the 70s and perpetrated until the 90s and 2000s, is one of the few pageants that would show, the actual scores of the candidates in their pageants. Miss Earth, on the other hand, has a very hires annually a external third-party tabulator to review scores and make sure that whoever makes the top 8, top 4 of the pageant are actually judged and scored as such. So importante yung yung integridad ng isang pageant na hindi na-appoint lang or hindi nagkakaroon ng mga chismis about the pageant being fixed in order to satisfy the owners, whims, and in order for to satisfy certain requirements from sponsors na hindi yung konsepto ng ginapang yung nanalo, hindi nagkakaroon ng ganong mga arrangements. And integrity really is very core in terms of finding a winner and looking for a winner, because kung walang integridad yung pageant, people lose trust in the process of how a winner is selected. Last on the list is the criteria of relevance. And the reason why we included this in the list is because we need to know, why does this pageant matter? Importante ba itong pageant na ito sa panahon ngayon? Ano yung konteksto na kinakailangan natin siyang suportahan? Dahil ba popular siya? Dahil ba it is trendy nowadays to support this pageant? And it needs to dig deeper than that. So dami na naglipana ng mga international na pageants. Ano yung namumukod-tanging nagbibigay sa kanya ng importansya sa panahon ngayon? And Miss Earth, I believe, is one of the most, if not the most relevant pageant there is nowadays, especially because of the conversation around climate change. It is important for us to have this list of criteria in order for us to establish what comprises, an alpha pageant. It is needed simply because kinakailangan may standard tayo in terms of paano natin pinipili, sinasala yung mga pageants na ito in terms of their relevance, integrity, in terms of their brand equity, and their prestige. Hindi pwedeng all gloss and without relevance ang isang pageant dahil it becomes very one-sided. Hindi rin naman pwedeng all advocacy and walang gloss ang isang pageant, because we need to have a certain level of popularity in terms of visibility para hindi ka rin naman napag-iiwanan at hindi pinag-uusapan ng mga pageant fans and ng pageant community. So having a good balance between all these criterias and ticking all of these criterias in the box allows you to become, the kind of pageant na dapat fina-follow at kinakailangan binibigyan ng suporta. And that is why, for now, among all the pageants that there's around, the pageants of Miss Universe, Miss Earth, Miss International, and Miss World are still considered the alpha pageants because they tick off all of the boxes without hesitation. And yun yung pinaka-dahilan kung bakit namumukod-tangi sila among all the pageants internationally. I hope you enjoyed this episode and this topic. I hope na supportahan nyo yung mga ganitong klaseng conversations and discussions on YouTube, on our channel, because these are the kinds of conversations that we want, na may exchange tayo ng puro-puro at mabigyan natin ng panibagong perspektibo kung ano yung mga bagay-bagay that comprises an alpha pageant. And I hope that you don't forget to hit the subscribe button and follow us here on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. And I hope to see you again soon in our next episode. Bye everyone and take care.